you know, and what they did, and you can say, oh, we can do that, because it's not that daunting of a task. Absolutely, yeah,
And on 2C, you list land use.
yes,
So that's like, when you're talking about the big picture, you're gonna say, this type of building or development here, business district here, is that what you mean by that?
right, exactly, exactly, yeah.
So you're not going to code level, but you're going to multifamily homes or business or,
Right,
okay.
right, yeah, absolutely, take, right, I mean, probably a lot of the village will be very stable, where you're not gonna really say, oh, everything's gonna change a lot, you know, on the housing and neighborhoods, but there might be, you know, some areas where you say, well, here's an area that has more potential, what does that potential mean, you know? Well, yeah,
Okay, so at the end of the year,
yeah,
give or take, we can have this great vision, we all come together and we have this vision on what we want, where we want it, land use, etc.
yeah.
My concern is, and just to clarify, you don't get deep into the zoning, but so with that vision, if our codes do not reflect that vision and the language of the codes are vague, we are in an open door situation as we currently are right now. You know, we have areas in the village that are zoned one way, but yet there's language in that, within that code that allows for certain things that, was that really intended initially when that zone was made?
Yeah,
So that's my concern. I don't, where along the line does that get revised, the current language that we have that is an absolute,
I think we work side by side with,
yeah,
with the planners. Okay, the
Right.
village board, you know, coming up with our meetings without the planners here. You know, to go back to what Tom was saying, you know, we have a lot of exemptions in our code. That's probably the biggest problem of our codes.
And when we
Okay.
worked on it as a committee in 21, whenever it was, we eliminated all the exemptions. That was one thing we deleted immediately, and we tightened up the code. We have all that, we just have to bring the green book to the blue book, or.
there's a lot more issues than the exemptions.
Oh, we're aware of that, but we
Yes.
have to start
Yeah.
somewhere. We have
Right,
to.
oh no, absolutely. So where
We gotta
along
chip
the pro-
away
where
at-
does that
at-
happen is what I'm asking, so.
It would be, not with them, you're more than welcome to be here, but that would be at a village board meeting, a special meeting, public hearing.
So it's happening simultaneously,
It has to
parallel
happen-
with the
it has to happen
comprehensive plan.
simultaneously.
So
Yes.
the current codes can be changed along the way throughout this
That's what I'm saying,
process?
Yeah.
Okay,
And one is not dependent on the other. In other words, the comprehensive plan doesn't depend on
No.
the zoning codes. We can get the zoning codes done.
Right.
Right.
And really, because it's not in the code, doesn't mean that the applicant can't go up in front of a board.
well, anyone can ask for anything, it's just a matter of what leverage do we have as a village to say, you know, this is not permissible here.
Right, one of the examples I was mentioning today, we have in our code books, certain businesses can be working out of a home. Okay, it could be an engineer, an attorney. You could tutor no more than 2 kids. Architects, I guess planners would
Maybe,
be
I don't
part of
know.
that. But you can't do nails. Okay, why?
Traffic in and out.
But if it's one person
No,
at a
there's
time,
health codes.
okay?
There's the health codes on it.
Well, okay, so that's the reason why we can't do that then, okay? But these are the things that we have to look at. We have to look at with a fine tooth comb, everything that was happening here for years and years and years. Where do we want to go? Here's where we are now. I'm not a precedent person. I don't believe in precedent. Precedent to me is, here's where we are, how do we move forward? Okay? Not, we can't go, well, this used to happen here. No, it can't be that way anymore. Follow what I'm saying? So I make myself clear? I don't know. You know, they used to stone people at the village square, that was precedent. Well, they don't do that anymore.
Maybe we could help with this
Yes.
a little. If you think of the comprehensive plan as, say, a map of New York. You've got the general shape of New York, you see Lake Erie, you see the Hudson, all of that, but it's not in detail, but you know it's New York, okay? So the zoning is what takes that down from a map of New York to a map of Washingtonville, okay? The zoning is where you get into the nitty-gritty details and where you implement the policies that you've set forth in your comprehensive plan. Like, say, your comprehensive plan, you say you want more,
Complete streets,
Yes.
sidewalks, the
Great.
open space.
you want to be able to connect more to the trail. Okay, the zoning is where you say, all right, your street needs to be this wide, you need to have a sidewalk. Every street that goes down to the trail has to have a bike lane that's 5 feet wide. That's where that happens, and it is the best way to do this is to make sure that your zoning is modified to implement the policies of your comprehensive plan as quickly as possible after the adoption of your comprehensive plan. Simultaneously is great. Some folks feel that that's a little much to take on all at once. So sometimes you do your comp plan and then like 6 months later you finish up your zoning. It's a thing. But that is, your zoning is the tool that you use to build your plan, basically.
And what happens organically is you do the comp plan, decades later, the comp plan still lives somewhere, if it lives anywhere. I joke in this room because we don't know. But what happens is you have the Village of Goshen, 1974, 1971 maybe, and what you do is you just keep changing your code. But then you look at it one day, your code is really not matching your comp plan. So it's, we're not trying to be delusional here. It happens all the time, but it just makes it better if you can keep it connected somehow and supportive.
So suggestion is review comp plan every 5 years.
Yes,
And
That's
review-
ideal.
And review zoning.
As part of this process, or if it's overwhelming, perhaps a secondary committee, or you cut it in half. I'm sure there's people here that would like to look at that, maybe a subgroup.
So are you saying the zoning, what you had just said, that statement, that the zoning is a tool for the comp plan?
yes.
So if our zoning is not the language in the zoning right now, I'm not, look, we can have a vision of something that doesn't exist right now. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about our current codes for zones that we currently have that we would like to keep that way. But the language within those codes are vague and leaves doors open for things that should not be happening. So when does that get worked on? When can we start to implement revisions for that so that we're not in these situations, the zone being used for what the intent was and is?
So we have to work simultaneously, isn't it? What-
Right, no, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and that's absolutely fine, and that happens all the time. You write the home office exemption, and then, Joe the lawyer comes in and says, hey, there's nothing in here about law offices.
Sorry, Jim.
Those lawyers.
But it's a way of compromise during the process. That's how they leave it vague, so that it is, so everyone's happy. We see that in our laws elsewhere. And that's almost purposeful, so that it's open to interpretation.
Oh,
Right, so,
That's what you want to be
Right now,
careful
our
of.
interpretation is not making a lot of village residents happy.
yes,
That's
no.
right. So
Great.
that's
So
why
this
you
is why you
revisit
go
it.
through.
Yeah, but it's beyond the interpretation of what's allowed and possibly what the exemption is. You have zones that are basically pointing in two directions. So if I'm not happy if it's an R100 zone, it references, go look at the RA zone. And maybe then you could use what's in that zone. So it's pointing all over the place, and that's the disaster at the moment.
That's
I
right.
think as the committee, as a sub, that we need to look at that, if that's gonna be the baseline, potentially, that's one of the first things that needs to happen, is identify through the 2.5 square miles that we are, what do we want it to look like?
Mhm.
And then from there, the building block is the plan itself. That's the way I look at it.
The plan is what you want it to look like, the zoning is how you make it happen. So yes, it
Right.
does sound like you need to review your zoning, and from the county planner's perspective of having read your zoning, please, we encourage this.
Please.
Please.
So, you review your zoning, and you can do that as part of this committee if that's the way you decide to go, but, yeah, you're using the zoning as a tool to implement the vision of your comp plan. That's its purpose.
I'll be the first to volunteer for a subcommittee for that. Anybody wants to?
We actually started the zoning first, and when we had that committee back in 21, we were told, no, you can't do the zoning first, you gotta get a comp plan. So the zoning, we really picked apart. A lot of us,
There was a lot of hours spent,
Yeah.
a lot of edits.
I saved everything, I have everything, and again, we have to just bring everything from one book to the other. I'm gonna put all those edits in there, everybody's welcome to review it once I have that done. But a lot of work has been done. I don't wanna take anything away from that previous committee, because I appreciate everything that they did.
Well, if you have it and the ball's already rolling on it, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, it's
I'd love
it's
to
just
see
a
it.
lot of work. I'd love for you to see it as soon as we get it done.
Yes.
I have a question here for the planner. In your experience, sir,
Yep, I'm listening. Just drawing lines.
okay. In your experience, you have these 4 buckets, let's
Yeah.
call them. Is there one that takes precedence over others, especially sensitive to certain issues that are sort of coming up regarding zoning, or whatever the issue might be? Is there any one or 2 of these? Is this a numerical order for convenience, or did you do this for importance? Or is there any area, it just doesn't matter, whatever we want to do?
Recognizing that everything's connected though, right? There's a couple that interconnect, right? So I'd say overall land use, the whole topic of land use is probably the one that I would land more squarely. So now, every one of these topics will have some land use pieces, right? Okay. And so I would say that, and human character, right, it's gonna help guide land use, right? And recognize, so I think that's gonna be a big, and we've mentioned it's a big part of this plan, land use. And I do wanna throw a ribbon so we're all on the same page about the zoning, okay? So what we're talking about is there's a kind of technical, let's call it consolidation, cleanup, rectification of the code, right? Has happened, it's gonna proceed. We're gonna be doing the plan, right, this kind of higher level. That work, the code fixing, can happen. But we gotta remember, we're looking beyond that code fix, which is fixing up what exists. We're looking at what's up ahead, right? Look ahead. Because all of a sudden, if we don't, we'll say, oh, we fixed something, but what we didn't realize there was a big problem or a big opportunity that we're missing out on. So that's part of what we want the plan to do as well. Because then we'll be, you won't get the value for the future. And we might not come up with maybe just some really simple things, I don't know, yeah.
I'm sorry, just,
No.
so for example, I know last week, one of the things that we talked about was potentially having like an historical district. And we're saying like, if there's an historical district, those houses would have to be, like, preserve the integrity of it. So say we agree on an historical district, then when this goes to the board, then obviously the zoning would have to reflect like, hey, if this is an historical district, you can't knock this down and put up like a modern building or is that like what we're talking about? Like how they have to kind of go hand in hand?
And even that, okay, let's talk about that. I apologize, I may be talking too much.
No.
But even a historic district, so, for example, you might say, the village, this committee might say, this is important, we all agree this area is important. The village board may not have all the information it needs to implement a full historic district. may not, there's research involved, what qualifies, but, for example, for an interim, you could put an overlay and say this is a design review of historic importance character, and right now, in this next round of zoning, we're gonna put that on top of that, and everybody agrees we're gonna do that, before we get into a higher level of every window needs, like a whole, conformance with the Secretary of Interior standards for historic preservation, which is a whole list of things, right, which is all great and beautiful, if you wanna get to that level. People in that neighborhood may or may not want that, you don't know. So, but that would be part of it, and I'm thinking maybe, we don't know yet, maybe we will wanna adopt some of your cleanup code as one thing, and maybe take the draft plan and draft zoning forward, depending on what's important, We did that with our town, where we had, I think you guys were mentioning it, Kate, you have a draft plan, and then you start to process that, and then you start to, you draft zoning for that plan, and you can adopt those together as one thing, or whatever the best way to do it for the village, and that is something we will wanna figure out with the village board and the village attorney about what's the most efficient way to do that, And you don't have to make all your zoning conform right away. Sometimes you're not ready. In other words, you mean the community, especially if there's changes that are gonna affect folks. You might say as a committee, we're happy with this idea, right? Let's say it's a neighborhood business district or something, right? You might have a couple of businesses. Well, maybe the people who own all that property aren't as on board as the committee is, or you haven't processed it with them enough, you just haven't time. So some of it doesn't mean, this is just my opinion, has to be done today to create every single idea in the code from a land use perspective. Some may or may not be ready, we don't know at this point.
So when you mention the boards, and I'll ask the three opinions, four opinions, do we talk about the village board, planning board, and zoning board as a joint meeting? Or does it lie on one board?
For one meeting to,
No, at the same meeting, we're gonna have both the zoning board, planning board, and village board together
Right.
and here to discuss the changes that we're looking for in zoning? Or does it just fall on the village board?
I would think you'd have the committee. I think you would have it at, again, to what, she said, you already have something, you would have a zoning,
Right,
to
so that was
visit.
a committee, it
and,
was the committee that we have like right now.
right, but then to either continue that review, to add, to see how it jives with what you're going with here in the comp plan,
Okay,
but that it then, for final approval, it would be at all village board meetings and anyone welcome to come, board member or not, right? Is that what
Yeah.
I'm hearing? Okay. Anyone want to add?
Legally speaking, the village board is the one who adopts the zoning code, because the zoning code is a law.
Right.
I would encourage you to get the expertise of your planning board and your zoning board
that's
who,
whatever, yes.
who deal with the laws and their implementation all the time. I think that would be valuable input, but on the whole, legally, it comes back to the village board.
So here's what I'm hearing as a new person to this. There seems to be comprehensive plan, long-term goal, zoning, short-term goal. And I think there's quite a few of us sitting at this table, myself included, who are more focused right now on the short-term goal. Because if we don't get zoning under control, it seems as if the comprehensive plan may never go anywhere. Because if land use or land is bought up and it's under all the old zoning, they'll get grandfathered in, and although we may want it to go one way, it won't be able to go that way. Is there a way for some people in this committee to perhaps help you with your work? Must your work be done by people who work within the village? Could there perhaps be like a small subcommittee? If you need editing, if you need someone to sit and type, if you need someone to sit and write, because as someone who's volunteering their time, right now for me, I feel like I could help in the short term, perhaps there's other people here as well who could do that, and let's get that piece pushed forward, because I'm hearing from you, it's bogged down, it's just so much work, can we help you?
I'm sure, yeah. We'll figure out a plan.
Happy to do it, happy to
Yeah.
type,
Thank
edit,
you.
whatever you need.
Okay.
Thank you.
So is it safe to say that if we're going to put all this work and money in developing a comprehensive plan, and it's adopted by, we have these public hearings, and it's adopted by the village board, that, they're going to, if we're gonna spend all this time and money and effort, that it's going to be, the zoning is going to kind of line up so that, like, if we're talking about, a historic district, and we're sitting here doing research and doing this, it's not gonna be for nothing. We should feel confident that these things would be, what would be,
Code will reflect.
yeah, that it would be I think that, like, hearing something like that might put some people's mind at ease here.
Yeah.
One has to go, one has to, we have to marry everything.
Yes.
Yes. I don't like to do things just because I have nothing to do. So, yes.
Maybe a point of assurance might be the timeline to bring forward a recognizable and adoptable zoning bucket while the comprehensive plan is mutating and growing forward, and then able to incorporate those interim accomplishments into the comprehensive plan. Is that, I'm just hearing people are very concerned, rightly so, but we're here about the comprehensive plan. So is there a way to explain timeline development so that tasking can support the goals, the time goals, okay? I'm really focused on that because everybody's concerned, and you have more experience than we do on this type of train. So maybe you could share a few moments on that?
Right, well, I can share one piece of wisdom. If that's what you think your zoning does or will do, you probably don't know, even if you look at it. None of, we have done a lot of zoning work, and I think that fixing up the technical things is great, but and again, to your point, I can see having the zoning, let's call it a round of zoning amendments, cleanup amendments, legislative kind of things be done. But I'm pretty confident we're gonna find more creative tools for you to use that we're gonna talk about in the comprehensive plan that aren't in your zoning now. And even no matter how you fix that zoning, unless we get agreement on what those tools are and what the future is gonna be, we have buy-in from stakeholders and landowners and that kind of thing. I don't want you to undershoot what's possible for the village in terms of creativity in writing zoning and in a plan. And I've seen the power of a good plan and good coding, good implementation, do great things. So just be aware, it will take some time, have some patience, have some confidence that it will be done in that kind of way. And I've seen a lot of zoning projects get done. No one knows that they're not good until a point later, when some unknown project comes in. And it's like, wow, I can think of a town in the Shunga Mountains where I looked at their code and said, wow, this is a development travesty about to happen. And sure enough, this development was proposed, subdividing the size of a mountain, Oh, and it's totally allowed by the zoning. It didn't look that bad. Zoning had called for 5-acre lots, Well, you saw that subdivision plan and what it would do to the visual impact of the whole valley. It's like, And to fix that was a $20 million problem because, unfortunately, people like, fortunately there were people who could help fix that, but the zoning couldn't fix it. It was too late. So I think you got to do both, But and I think the visioning and some of this work. Let's face it. How old is your land use map for the village? That zoning map. It's Pretty, right? Jim, what do you think?
95 maybe.
95? And was it, what was it like before then? How much did it change before that?
Wasn't significant changes.
Right, yeah,
There were some movements of some of the districts a little bit, but
right,
not
okay.
tremendously different.
Yeah, and I was saying it's terrible, it's not, but you know, what's the future, you know?
And that's the issue with the code, because with the code, when they wrote it, they were obviously writing it after the fact. They have a zone where, you know,
Right.
a winery is allowed, well, you know, that was pretty specific. And,
Oh, where's that gonna be?
You know, you could have certain types of business which just happened to be there. So they were writing a code to apply to what already existed. And one of the issues that then came up is, under the special exception use provisions of almost every zone, there's references back to other zones that you can do. For example, I was just looking at the OL zone, the office zone.
Yeah.
And under special exception uses, it says anything that's allowed in an NB zone, which is the neighborhood business. So now a special exception use requires approval from the planning board, it's not automatic, but the zoning code allows these kind of, well, I don't fit in this, but if I can get the planning board to approve, I'll fit in NB zone or BG zone.
Right.
So I think those are the issues that could be cleaned up relatively easily. But I agree, I think until we put the comprehensive plan together, we don't know what the zoning should look like.
Mhm.
Because we might have new ideas and new concepts that aren't envisioned in this, you know, 35-year-old code.
And just remember, nothing's perfect for long. We've been around the cell towers, we were all blindsided. Solar fields, completely. The distilleries, the wineries, the cideries, all of these. You know, there's so many things that are gonna keep coming. You can't plan for all of it, but then that's where you go make the amendment.
In looking at the codes, and I agree with everything that Jim just said, I think we've got some big holes
Okay.
and some little holes and some things that we don't know about yet. I think a lot of us here are just looking to get some of these big holes plugged up, because we think that'll at least, you know, help, you know, in the shorter term. But it's the big holes that concern me the most.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
At the beginning of the meeting, you had mentioned you were gonna like break everybody up into kind of buckets and assignments.
Yeah,
Are we doing that today?
we're gonna do it today, I'm gonna pass it. Thank you.
That's why he was making the line.
And I apologize, maybe I was in front of the room because I was terrible at handwriting, but these are abbreviations of the 4 topics in the handout. I just have community character, transportation, there's a lot of sub-ideas, housing and natural resources. If you could just put your name next to your preference and then in parentheses, your other choices in order, you know? Okay.
Can you just kind of
Yeah, you wanna just,
tell us the buckets again,
Yeah, you
just so we know?
yeah,
So community characters, anything,
Right.
the look of the town, the village,
Yeah.
the look of the village, transportation, anything,
you're doing a great job.
commerce, growers, right? I'm
Yeah.
just trying to say, like,
Yeah.
housing is not just housing, but also like business uses.
Yep, and demographics and what housing items
As
are.
a teacher, can we maybe have you announce this, who wants to be part of it, and when you write the names down, because if we pass this around, it's gonna take an hour.
Everyone has this in front of them, right?
Who wants to be a number one? Who wants to be a number two, right? Let's just
Yeah.
move it along here. Who wants to be a number one?
That's right, community character.
Who wants to be a number one?
Yeah.
Who wants to be a number one?
Number one is.
Do you want to?
Community character.
Use in one.
No, you got it.
No, so you're taking notes, you want to do it, or?
Community character, defining key elements of Washingtonville's unique village character and in context of its rich history and current land use patterns.
I'll do it.
All right, so we can just get last names and we can always round it up.
I'm gonna stand up, just give me a second. Keep your hand raised until I get you. Jody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Connolly.
Patrice.
Thank you.
Jim, was that you?
Yeah.
Okay. About your bride. She gonna do something different?
Anybody else for community character?
Independent women.
I can see that left hand just flying
Yeah.
right now.
Okay, transportation.
Margaret.
Andrea. Okay, Okay, housing,
No, she's
two. What's your name again? Washington.
Number 3 is housing settlement patterns, affordability,
I
and
got you.
changing demographics.
Helena, you got me?
I do not, I do now. Anyone else for housing? No, natural resources.
Was that number 4?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Stormwater.
Are you going? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
How many did you get for that?
I only got two.
All right. Well, two's okay.
Make everybody
Better than one, we need more than one.
I can put that as my second one.
got no.
Margaret, if you had to choose between transportation or housing as your first choice? Okay.
I hear all amongst us.
So I just a quick guide, we'll send a little bit more around, but if you think there's a subtopic that you want to bring into that, that's you got the power of the pen, so do that, so.
Not everybody's here
Did
either.
everybody sign it?
There's a few people I know that.
Okay, so we'll
We'll send it out in a minute.
send it out and they can ask them, hey, if you just join in, thank you. Well done, thank you, teacher.
I said to him,
So when we were in the paper.
Yeah, no, right,
teacher also to talk.
right, sorry. That was better.
Now, if you want to put everything that we've done in an email to Selena, Selena can forward the email with all the zoning changes.
I don't know if there's
Yeah, well, you're gonna find out responsibility. Yeah, I think to get organized and put information down, so what we want to do is put these into a schedule of meeting when that topic is up.
That's where you need those drafts.
And so I was just curious.
Yeah, I may even make it a separate email that she was organized.
So when we hear and then the substance of the showing.
I don't know. I think the first email I'll send.
Are we meeting in these subgroups here at the next meeting, or are we meeting on our own? What's the process for these subgroups?
I think it should be here,
Yes,
Bring your ideas.
okay? Here.
right, yes.
I guess
I
here.
think we should also reach out to the people who are not here to
So I'm gonna
email.
send an email
Right,
to
send an email,
everybody.
and then maybe by the next meeting's the 28th, we can have an idea of what the committees are gonna look like. I don't think we should actually start yet until we solidify what committee, what
They can
group.
bring
is
their
it.
ideas.
Right.
I have a question on it. I'm on stormwater, naturally. So here we go. Are you going to provide a checklist of possible topics that would fall within the discussion for that group?
Yeah, we'll give you a start and you're free to go. We want you to make this your own.
But topics that shouldn't fall off the table,
Right, yes, right.
right?
Yep,
Okay. Then
yeah.
baseline topics, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do we get a sample of just a boilerplate comprehensive plan?
Yeah.
There's no real boilerplate, but, we can give you something.
You send it to me, I can forward it to Selena, and we'll get it out to the whole committee. You have everyone's blind copy email, so we're not sharing emails.
Yeah, I'm getting out of there, right? Yeah.
I did want want to announce, if anyone wants to see a photo of what the Washingtonville train depot used to look like, I know someone asked about the rail trail, I have some pictures here of the former Washingtonville depot and freight house. Just for your information, if you're interested in taking a look.
Very nice.
And Joe, weren't you gonna get, someone had asked me, a resident, about the, from Bill Standish, everything that Linda had done with the Historical Society? Are you able to get whatever, I thought you had mentioned at a meeting, there's.
That I would contact him, I have not contacted him, but I will contact him, and he'll share whatever she had. You know, Linda Standish was, those of you who don't know, Linda Standish was our village historian who passed away just over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, and she took a lot of knowledge with her. So she's missed, but she was part of the other committee, you know, before everything fell apart. So some of her notes, some of her writings, we have, I think, in that. So we'll share, we'll forward everything to Selena, Selena will forward everything to everyone, the committee. Anyone else?
Is there a next meeting scheduled, or?
The 28th, I believe, is Saturday morning.
Okay.
I'm gonna just say one more thing, if it's okay.
Sure.
And I probably bothered them on my tour, but we said something about transportation, we said something about transit. We didn't talk about traffic, and you do have some of that right there at 208 and 94. You need a through road on the northeast section somewhere. I'm sure other people have some other ideas, but something needs to happen, and that again is part of your plan and your zoning, that how do you do that? Do you talk about through roads? Do you talk about current ones, proposed ones, new development? You can't overlook that because you have to take the pressure off of that intersection.
One of the, you know, to get to what you were saying, what we pointed out today, up in Highgrove, there was, Ahern was supposed to go all the way up to Moffett.
Right.
Somebody forgot to tell the builder that. So it doesn't go over.
Well, also some residents insisted that there be 2 dead-end cul-de-sacs
Right.
as opposed to 1 through street,
That's what happened.
because they wanted their children to be able to play out in the street.
So there's
I
paper
asked if they close
streets,
Route 208 so that my children could play there.
but there's, so what happens typically is there's paper
There's
streets.
paper-
And
that's
it's not
what
that
you
they
were
don't
referring to.
listen, again, back to political pressure, the boards make these decisions that allow the cul-de-sacs, because they're appealing to the people who are in the audience saying, don't do that, don't put a through road, because my kids have to play and it's unsafe. And
But
there goes all the good
interesting-
laid plans you had in a moment.
Interesting that you raised the issue of through streets. I shared this with Joe and John this afternoon. This is the December 1963 Blooming Grove, Washingtonville Community Master Plan. Apparently, no one knew this existed, but buried in this wealth of information was a talk about certain bypass streets and, you know, to alleviate traffic. And they even were proposing in 1963 to correct the intersection right in the middle of the village, because those of you who've been here longer, Route 208 didn't line up on both sides of the intersection. There was a little detour where you came to Route 94, you had to make a right-hand turn, you went about 80 feet, and you had to make a left-hand turn to go up Route 208. And in 1963, they talked about straightening that out. I believe they straightened it out in about 1997 or 2000, so it took a while to get around to it, but they addressed traffic in this as well.
And what did they forget to do? You and I discussed this in the center of the village. They forgot to put the wires
Underground.
underground.
But now,
When they had the
Somebody's job.
opportunity,
Yeah.
that was a huge oversight.
so now, as developers come into the community and they're doing transportation studies, do we have the right as a village to say, I know when to avoid town, I know when to stay away from the middle of town, but when you do a study in July,
Yeah.
it's not appropriate. I mean, let's call it as we see it. They are, because
Yeah.
the board members, the planning board members
Yes.
can say, we need it this day, we need it
Okay.
this time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Within reason,
And I
they
think they
probably
are
can say,
too.
we need you to go out every
During
Monday.
school,
Yeah.
on a weekday,
That's
not in the
right.
summer,
5
not
o'clock
on a
at night.
holiday
Yeah.
week.
I believe they are asking
They are.
Yes.
for a new
Okay,
traffic study.
all right, good.
Yeah,
You
Because
can't
that
do a
was a
traffic
joke.
study at 3:30 Saturday morning.
And we also kicked
I say
one of the traffic
there's no
studies that
traffic,
was
I don't know
done
why
with
everyone's so
COVID.
upset.
Good, thank
Just
you,
didn't make,
thank you.
That makes
It's
sense.
good to hear.
Thank you.
the only thing I will say with the traffic studies, sometimes you gotta be careful what you wish for.
That's right.
Listen, you know what,
Just let me finish real quick.
uh-huh.
A lot of businesses moved out of the village, so it's no more Spindler, there's no more other shops in the back, so we may have lost some traffic, so the new traffic study might actually be more favorable than the old traffic study. Careful what you wish for.
You know what, I just want it to be honest
Okay.
and at the right time. That's all I'm asking for.
Well, they do it like, it's a tremendous number of times.
That's fine.
I mean, it's like,
Yes, but the,
That's
but
fine.
the day that they chose.
oh, no, but not anymore.
Yeah.
They did,
Okay.
last recent.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
And,
you.
Thank you.
See you on the 28th. I think Donna was baking a cake. 28th. Just don't bake it
Don't we
twice.
have some leftovers from yesterday?